Welcome everyone to today's knowledge share. I've got just a couple of slides that I'm going to share with you, and then I will hand over to our speakers. Today's knowledge share is called Teach Your Clients to Give Better Briefs. Let's try and... Apologies, it's not moving on. And we welcome our speakers, Dan Hyde and Victoria Peel, and they will introduce themselves. But Dan is a colleague of ICG member Alex Blondin, who's in the audience today, from Everything is User Experience. And Victoria Peel has worked with them from a company called Literal Humans. So as I said, you will hear more from them when I hand over to them, but we welcome them and thank them for running today's session. And before I hand over, I would like to thank our sponsor today, which is Perspective. Perspective Research Services specialise in data collection solutions involving qualitative, face-to-face, CATI and online approaches, both domestically in the UK and internationally, and with consumers and B2B audiences. Please feel free to contact Jade On, who is the commercial director there, for any questions. So I'm going to now hand over. I think, Dan, you've got your slides. If you want
good to go.
Bring those up, over to you.
Hiya, I'm Dan. I'm some of you might already know Alex. I'm his co-founder in Everything is User Experience, and we are joined today by Victoria Peel Yates of an agency we are very friendly with now, called Literal Humans. So just to get the introductions out of the way for sake of context, is this large enough for everyone who is in speaking mode at the moment?
Yep.
Big up. Before we get deep into it as well, if you want to ask any questions, just use the virtual sticking your hand up or drop a question in the chat and we can address it from slide to slide. We're happy to interrupt ourselves and address anything. So Everything is User Experience. We do UX strategy that's driven by a deep understanding of users' needs and desires. So the core aspect of what we do, UX is about people, not websites or apps. So I'll just read through the quick bump. UX strategy is the foundation for good customer experience. So great user experience delivers the best customer experience. Good customer experience is what builds businesses. So UX strategy is just good business strategy. The trouble is, most businesses don't really know their customers. So we help businesses get to know their customers. And you can see there's a list of core services that we offer: customer strategy, user research, audience definition, journey mapping, service design, product strategy, UX copywriting, web design and wireframes. But we are called Everything is User Experience because we use UX strategy, user research, customer research to inform all sorts of other things like service design that exist in the real world as well.
Hi everyone. So as Dan said, I am Victoria from Literal Humans, and we are a 360-degree marketing agency. So we deliver human-centered branding and content, which is in the name, content marketing services. So every website build, content strategy and ad campaign that we do is rooted in market and user research. So we believe that content should drive human connections. And the only way to connect with humans is, of course, to actually talk to them. So our onboarding process involves talking to our clients and their customers. So we say that data plus stories equals target customers. So you need the data, it's going to provide a lot of insights, but you also need the stories that are going to give you more nuance and provide insights that the data can't. And so even though we're not strictly researchers, research is the foundation of good content. So we dig deep into this data and the stories to create future-proof growth plans that set our clients up for sustainable long-term success. And to me as a writer, writing is always easier when you know who you are and who you're talking to. And I say who you are because I'm writing on behalf of my clients, so I need to know who I'm writing as and who I'm writing to. So content that speaks to both solves problems for both the end users and our clients because it helps to achieve their business goals. So we also have a long list of services, including content marketing, branding, performance marketing, website design, email marketing, PR, strategy, and organic social media. And our clients span a variety of sectors, including fintech, health tech, climate tech, a whole bunch of different B2B SaaS products, social justice, and nonprofits. So obviously, to understand such a wide range of clients, we need to do a lot of research.
So we wrote a white paper about the briefing process. So the reason why we're presenting this today is because, well, good briefing requires good research. Briefing is the second most neglected aspect of a project, and it is almost certainly the most important. Like, just for context, the most neglected phase is feedback. No one ever bothers with feedback and folk don't like it. But they are both similarly important. And we think in both cases, they're neglected because they are research propositions. The problem is that, certainly the problem that we found, is when clients engage with us, they usually think they already have the answers. So across this white paper that we're going to talk you through, not page by page, but the principles that underlie it, that are underlying within it, and how all of those really relate to it being a serious research proposition, a neglected one. So across the white paper, we developed 3 key propositions. The first one, garbage in, garbage out. Probably don't need explaining that, but just for the sake of it, if you brief shite, your work will be rubbish. Second, briefs are both a deliverable and an ongoing process. The brief that you get is delivered to you by the client. It's something you need to work on with the client, and it is something that is likely to evolve in the course of the project, whatever the project. They're rarely exactly the same at the end as they were when they started. And brief creation needs co-creation. If you're delivering on a project, you really should be engaging with a client in defining and refining the brief so you can deliver the best possible product.
Yeah, so this is our white paper. We're not going to walk you through page by page, as Dan said, but we will share the link so you can download it and read it if you want to. And so our white paper that we produced is about creative briefing because we're creative agencies. And our intention was to educate our clients about how they can better engage with us, essentially, to get more bang for their buck. So we really wanted to make our own lives easier, but also help our clients succeed by letting us help them better, I guess. So, oh, is this you or is this me?
No, this is you. Sorry. Yeah. Oh, you've gone silent now. So there has been an ongoing issue with Victoria's headphones and microphone. Ironically, as I interrupted. Do you want me to pick up
I think
while we
so.
wait?
Dan.
Cool, right.
Okay.
So,
I think I'm back.
excellent.
Sorry. Okay, so every brief is a research opportunity. So the first thing you should do when you receive a brief is interrogate it, and this is kind of the first stage of your research, because it enables you to address 3 aspects of client projects that will inform you about what kind of relationship you're entering into. So the first thing you want to look at is, are you sure that you're actually addressing the right problem? Because if clients knew how to resolve the challenges they're facing, they obviously wouldn't hire us and they wouldn't need us. So as the experts in the room, it's our responsibility to make sure that we're actually working on the right thing that's going to achieve the goals that the client says they have. The second thing you want to look at is your client prepared to do the job properly? So by taking the time to work with your client and create a good, detailed, and collaboratively written brief, you're obviously going to make the project delivery smoother, faster, and more flexible down the line. And of course, the opposite is equally true. So if you don't take the time to debrief, you're probably going to end up with delays, overspend, and all sorts of things further down the line. And the third thing you want to be looking at is, can you work with this client? So the briefing process can function as a piece of meta research about the sort of project you're about to embark on. So you can think of it as a kind of litmus test for the chemistry of the relationship.
Yeah. If you end up with a negative response to each of those questions, you're probably going to hide into nothing.
So with that in mind, the most successful projects will of course be built on a partnership. So there is an inherent power imbalance in the client-supplier relationship. So it's something that we need to acknowledge and address. So one of the ways we do this is through open exchange and collaboration. And I mean, this is basically the foundation of a successful partnership. If you don't have open exchange and collaboration, it's going to be built on shaky foundations. While obviously a relationship based on these pillars will deliver the best results. So if that relationship can lead to the co-creation of your brief and setting up an honest, open, and trusting dialogue, it lets you set the tone for the relationship and the whole engagement. The next thing is, we know what we're doing, so we need our clients to let us do it. And collaboration enables your clients to learn more about your expertise, and it gives you a chance to improve on their ideas. And you can also use this as part of your project to make them look good and then give them the credit for it, and then they'll be very happy. So once you've established a partnership, then at that point, our role is to get the client focused on what matters. So of course, if you have unfocused goals or missing or irrelevant information, again, it could very easily lead to wrong turns and wasted budgets.
Cool. So a key aspect of the research underpinning any project we've found, certainly one that's neglected, is proper stakeholder mapping. It's exceedingly rare for a brief to include all of the information we need about a project stakeholders, and this requires research. And this, whilst we wrote this white paper for ostensibly what would be a creative project, I mean, this is equally true of any of the pure research projects that Alex and I work on. Any of the validation projects or messaging projects, it's all the same. The first thing we do is interrogate who the project's users are going to be, because creating the successful brief requires us to identify them all. So 3 facets of this, they'll all hold different places in the process. They will all have different needs that need to be accounted for, and all of those needs will need to be addressed in some way within the brief to ensure that the final deliverable works. No one accounts for all the stakeholders in one go. There are always more project stakeholders than we first imagined. So in order to do this, we ask them key questions. Like, we interrogate the subject by asking a few direct and oblique questions. So who will use the thing you're asking for? How will they use it? What sort of thing will improve their lives, presuming that's the goal? What do your bosses want? Them being our counterpart, usually someone within a marketing or product department. What are you not telling us? That's obviously an oblique question. We have to feel around for that, interrogating it. And what are the end users actually going to do with this? Now, this is often the key question, because what people often assume how people are going to use a product, a system or service isn't the same as how users actually use it. Now, in particular, internal stakeholders are a massive blind spot. Like, we rarely encounter a client who understands all of their internal stakeholders' needs and goals. Now, internal stakeholders like the people on the project team and other people within the business who are contributing to this endeavor. So misalignment of needs will bake unhappiness into a project. This is an emotional quality, not a practical one. It can be practical as well. So like senior leadership teams have different needs when compared to frontline staff. So internal research should be considered an essential in order to uncover these sorts of gaps. And if we do this, then we're able to know whether they're aligned or not. Politics and internal dynamics matter. Like, we've got to research these. Politics and power dynamics of stakeholders really matter. A gap in understanding the objectives of the project and its impact will create problems. So, in addition to that, influential stakeholders, the people who hold the power, can have a positive or negative effect. Largely, they're out of your hands, unless you can find an opportunity to include or embrace them. So, just as a way of explaining this further, internal users will extend far beyond the project team. So if you're thinking about a website, websites are going to need IT, security, website admin, content managers, content creators, designers, a ready source of imagery, stock imagery or stuff they're producing themselves, third-party services, like the list goes on and on. Unless we understand what all of these different stakeholders need or how they work in contribution to the project, we are probably going to shortchange them in the delivery, and we're going to create problems for ourselves and a product that doesn't do exactly what it's supposed to do. Certainly, this has been the experience of Alex and myself, and it is why we set up Everything is User Experience. Over you.
Apologies if you can hear a phone ringing in the background. It's not mine. If you can't hear it, don't worry about it. So I've got a couple of stories to illustrate this point. We've called it good client, bad client, which is a bit unfair. We probably should have called it client A and client B, but it looks good on the slide. So even if you know who your stakeholders are, there is a chance that you might not have access to them and therefore not be able to do the research that you need to do. So let's say bad client, the one that got away, was a health tech client in the wearables sector, with a huge science team and everything that we created for them. We were doing a content marketing plan for them. And everything that we were creating obviously had to be very much grounded in science. There was sort of a certain level of knowledge that the writer needed to have and to be able to do the research that was needed. So our content would have been a lot stronger if we had access to the science team to get their input. But unfortunately, we never got introduced to them. And although we got given their email addresses and we reached out to them, most of the time they just didn't reply. So we were able to find the information that we needed from other scientific sources or from other experts, but obviously it would have been much better if it had been coming from an internal source and with all of their own original data. Another issue was that our point of contact was the head of content, who was engaged in a power struggle with the social media team. So there was no cohesion between what the content team was doing and what the social media team was doing. So there was a completely disjointed marketing strategy, practically two separate strategies going on side by side, which obviously probably wasn't generating very good results for the client. And finally, they also didn't give us access to any of their data about how our content was performing for them. So when we went to them and said, oh, hey, look at all this traffic that we're driving to your website, look at all these sales that our content is helping to contribute to, they said, oh, no, actually, that's got nothing to do with you guys. So unsurprisingly, that client relationship ended. But the good client, the one that came back from the brink, fortunately is still with us to this day. It wasn't always the case that it was a smooth relationship. So this is another agency actually in the programmatic advertising space. So it's quite deep tech, again, very technical, requires a lot of expert input. And to be honest, at the beginning, it wasn't working very well because, of course, two agencies have different systems, different ways of working. And we were essentially trying to impose our way of working onto the other agency. And it wasn't working. So we had to take a step back and rethink the process. And then we got all of these subject matter experts into a meeting and we just said, hey, this is exactly what we need from you. This is why we need it. And this is the process that we suggest for obtaining that. And they were all on board. It worked super well. And ever since then, we've had a really good working relationship with them. And because of that, this same client then signed on for another engagement involving the Everything is User Experience team.
I mean, this is how we've been working together most recently. They were delivering a website project for them, as well as all the content marketing they do. And I'd encountered some difficulty in working out what the homepage was going to do. In fact, encountered difficulty in working out what the whole website did. Part of the problem was because the growth marketing agency, another agency, who were specifying a lot of the work, were guessing what needed to be done based on some challenges that they were facing. They reached a point of impasse, the project wasn't progressing, and yeah, the MD of the organization, Bill, he saw the white paper that we put out and he told literal humans to get us in to talk about it and do a bit of customer research to work out what their website actually needed to do. Consequently, we were able to overcome the impasse and they were able to crack on with their jobs. But I mean, all of this is just to evidence the fact that by not looking at all the stakeholder needs, by poorly defining what the purpose of the website was at the outset, by not doing any of the things we've talked about up to this point, they were creating problems for themselves that were irresolvable without, as Alex and I would always attest, speaking to your customers, you can't know what to do. Certainly not reliably. Does anyone have any questions at this point, just in case? Feel free to pipe up. No? Cool.
Can't see any hands.
No, I'm keeping an eye out. All right. So every project has its own feng shui master. So this is an anecdote that we use a lot to carry out research in a more oblique manner. So the proposition is stakeholders can appear where you least expect them to. So we use a feng shui master anecdote to smoke them out. Now, genuinely, this is about a feng shui master. We were working on a rebrand project for a Swiss hedge fund, and we have turned it into a strategic anecdote. The issue revealed, hang on, I'm using the wrong version of the slide. Apologies. Just by happenstance, by chance, we revealed an enormously influential stakeholder with an unlikely origin story. So it was a full rebrand project, in-depth research all the way down the line. It was positioning, repositioning, renaming, wholesale visual identity refresh. We'd interviewed their clients, lost business, prospects they were seeking to win, internal stakeholders of all sizes and shapes. The project was sailing through. Like, man, it was going super smooth. But we got to the point where we'd got the new name signed off, the repositioning approved, and we were plotting what to do with the visual identity work next. So, you know, just explaining the process, who we'd want to be calling upon, what was going to happen to the client. And just out of nowhere, the MD of the organization mentioned, oh yeah, by the way, I'll be running all of this work past my feng shui master, which sounds like an absurd joke, but we saw the marketing manager roll her eyes and it wasn't a joke to her. And he nodded like enthusiastically, like, Yeah, I have a feng shui master. Turns out he'd got divorced and he'd gone traveling in response to his divorce. And he'd been all over Asia. And on his travels, he acquired a feng shui master who, it turns out, was advising him on key decisions throughout his life and his business. So what we learned was the off-brand massive orange wall in the hallway. That was because the feng shui master had told him to. Like the MD told us, oh yeah, did you see all the crystals on the filing cabinets? Like proper big rock-sized crystals all over the place. He was seeking advice from this fella, and this guy was going to be a gatekeeper in the process. So we we've learned from that, and we use the feng shui master as an anecdote when we're working with clients, fleshing out the brief to try and flush out what sort of feng shui masters might be lurking in their organization. It isn't always going to be an actual feng shui master. This is like unexpected problems that come from within an organization. So this fella, we learned, he was already considered to be a problem by the internal team. We invited him in to join us in the project, so he wasn't given a chance to become a problem. And we turned him into an asset. What we learned from interrogating this rather than just dismissing it was this fella, he'd ostensibly written him a set of brand guidelines, like colors that were important, shapes, textures, materials, emotions, like all the bits, all the raw materials we need to inform how to develop a new visual identity for a client. They were all there. Like we were open to engaging with him, like unlike the marketing manager who just wanted shot of him. And immediately we had very clear direction for what the visual identity would need to do. Fed that into the brief, and we were able just to crack on. And the story works well when we're explaining to clients. We introduce it, like, what feng shui masters do you have in your organization? We tell the story, and then they look around amongst the team we're working with and say, oh yeah, I know who you're talking about. Because there are always difficult people within any sort of an organization. We just developed a peculiar research technique to smoke them out. So at this point, we've probably got the brief right. We've done the stakeholders, the politics, we've interrogated what the goals are, how we're going to get there, the resources, like amongst the internal stakeholders who are going to be available for us to be able to deliver on this work. Now we need to go back to where we started. It's always worth looking back at the brief you started with to work out, are you still trying to resolve the problem you started with? And does the challenge still look the same? Because the dissonance between those two positions, that can reveal a lot as well. So from how it started, we look back at goals and objectives, deliverables. Often they can change for good reason, sometimes for ill. And we'll look at the KPIs, the key performance indicators, and the objective key results that were initially spec'd out to try and make sense of what's going on. It can help you predict where problems might occur in the actual delivery as well. So at this point, how it's going, because we're rooting ourselves in the problem rather than the deliverable, we're better able to think about success and impact. Like understanding how the project goals feed into the broader business objectives. This will enable stronger creative approaches. And this is true as much of like a research project as it is an actual hardcore creative project. You know, it could be in customer acquisition or techniques for interrogating them or how one might structure a project. But because you've gone through this whole process, you as the supplier, you'll have more freedom to use your expertise and propose solutions that will work. So like in a before and after situation, I want this campaign to go viral, can be transformed into something much more reasonable. I want this campaign to target a niche subset of prospects who are already engaged with the subject, so we don't have the overhead of educating them. Something you can actually deliver on, something that makes sense and something that you're sure will deliver value to the client.
So now you've been listening to us talk for the last half an hour. We want to know what you think. We created this presentation to show how our approach to briefing is just as relevant to research projects as it is to creative projects. And so we would love to hear from you. Of course, if you have any questions, but also if you have any problems that you'd like us to work on together, we can workshop it here and now. If you have any thoughts about how you'll apply this in your work, any key takeaways, or any fresh perspectives on the briefing process, then we'd love to hear them. And of course, if you have any spooky feng shui master tales of your own, we would love to hear your briefing horror stories.
Thank you both. Any comments or queries? Feel free, if you can put your cameras on, it's always better for a discussion. If I don't see your hand, then feel free to speak up. So we've got a comment coming in from Viviane. Thank you for the presentation. I would love to have a link for it. Is that possible?
Yes. Do you have that to hand, Victoria?
Let me just put it up.
We can drop it into the chat for you. I mean, this was a weird presentation in that normally we're presenting stuff that we've done to clients rather than trying to make clients understand that the value of research, rather than trying to present to a bunch of researchers the value of applying what you do already in a different way to a project, or a bit that you might just do instinctively. We've sort of built this because of the experience of clients thinking they know it all to begin with. Sorry, Alex?
No, I was going to say exactly that. I think that's what we learned a lot with a lot of clients throughout our different lives, either working together or with partners like Victoria. It's just that how important it is to challenge that brief and start the research really early. Like, is this actually what you want? Because it's amazing how many clients want to look as if they know everything and try and dictate to the researchers, to the agencies, what the outcome is, when they should be actually telling us what the problem is and let us do the hard work of actually telling them how to solve the problem. And often that's not the case. And I think it's fundamental to go and look at that brief and teach the clients to think about how to brief us and stop trying to give us the answers. That's not their job. It's our job to give them the answers. Otherwise, why are they paying us?
And this slide, are we sure we're addressing the right problem? Is your client prepared to do the job properly? And can we work with this client? As professionals, this is potentially the most important slide for us. I mean, actually, I would suggest the stakeholder mapping one is the most important. But this is the second most important because this helps you to understand what sort of a relationship you're going to have. If they're dictating terms, man, fine. Pay me enough. I'm happy to go along with it. I can develop a sense of what sort of work you want us to deliver, how we need to talk about it. If we're just ticking boxes, as Alex and I have done, like plenty of times, that's fine. To be honest, it reduces some of the cognitive load on us. It makes it easier to deliver, even if it makes it more boring. Other clients, well, we've received a lot of bad briefs. And so having this sort of a methodology, this sort of an approach enables to turn bad briefs into good briefs or make clients think that their bad briefs are good briefs because we help them to evolve them into something better. And this is like from Alex and I specifically receiving a kicking from, I'm thinking of Talia.
Yeah.
Where the client told us, no client likes to be told they've delivered a bad brief. And they delivered an appalling brief. In fact, the brief they'd given us was completely, on paper, was completely different to the brief they expected us to answer at the pitch meeting. We didn't even think we were pitching. We thought we were just explaining to them what our methodology was, but they wanted us to pitch for a research exercise. There wasn't even a research exercise. Instead of us, as we've been told, telling them how we would research and harmonize their universe of brand websites, their global, harmonize them all into a single set of strategic messaging, which would enable regional control. We were told, how do you give us an interactive Alexa that does all this? Like, man, bonkers.
Lucy,
We didn't get the job, obviously, but we learned a hard lesson.
Lucy, do you hear in the community of any horror stories like that? I'm quite curious. I wonder if you've come across them.
I'm sure there are. And it would be a good thread to actually start, Alex, after this.
Yeah.
It kind of ties up with the webinar that we ran recently with Aura, who are running a charter for my mind's gone completely blank, but a charter to enable clients to have better relationships with their suppliers. And I guess obviously the brief is part of that. So I guess my question to you is what are your predictions for the future? Is it going to get better, do you think? Can you see any signs of improvement?
Yes, I think that there is a growing understanding that the agencies, and by agencies I also mean research consultants as well, the ones that will be successful, the ones who think more strategically and who actually are willing to go and actually say no sometimes to the client, because clients have realized that they're asking for things and they get what they ask for, and it's not always very, very good. And there is a growing understanding that you can leverage a lot of expertise out there. So the ones who are more strategic are going to get better. And I think that just in the very nature of who we are as researchers, we are strategists and we are thinkers, and we come up with a lot of insights that are very valuable. So I can only see it getting better, and I am seeing it we are seeing it with clients, that they respond far better to us challenging them than the ones where we used to just say, okay, we'll just deliver what you asked. Dan, Victoria, do you have any thoughts on that?
I mean, we're doing filtering as well. Sorry. Over you.
Sorry, no, I was going to say we're going through similar processes with our clients at the moment as well, because it's been sort of the same thing, you know, just delivering for what they ask us for. And actually, two of our ongoing retainers, we've said to them, look, we're going to take a month and just kind of reset the counter, you know, like start again at zero and do some research, you know, and do some research into your customers and start again from there and rebuild from there. And they've both said yes to that. So.
What are other people's experiences?
Sorry, I didn't catch that.
Me, I was just inviting others to join in.
All right, yeah. I mean, please raise a hand or drop a note. Oh, we've got Lucy F incoming.
Lucy? Sorry, I can't see everybody's hand.
Oh no. So we just came from a meeting with a client who just, because we've cultivated them, just dumped a problem on us. The heat pump market, this is a very specific challenge they've got. People buy heat pumps, they don't know how to use them, they don't know what to do with them, and they end up dissatisfied with their purchase. And it's a big commitment switching to a heat pump from having a gas boiler. So we've just had a pre-briefing briefing session where they told us the problem. We talked about what they wanted out of it. We interrogated the politics. We found out about budget territories, what sort of scope they might have, how far this project could potentially go, and who we needed to make look good. And now our job is to go away and write ourselves a brief that we can answer. They will crit it for us instead, because we built that rapport, we built trust, and they want to partner with us because they trust us to be able to get the right answers for them. And instead of just going to customers, which will be difficult to acquire, they trust us to think of different ways. So trolling forums where people are complaining about heat pumps, Facebook groups, the right-wing press, who've seemed to have subsumed heat pumps into the culture war, as well as speaking to installers and distributors who deal with customer complaints. That way we don't have the difficult overhead of trying to acquire heat pump users from the domestic market, because they might well want incentivization and there aren't the budgets for that, or there might be GDPR issues and we can't be bothered dealing with that. It'll take too long, because this is with a state body as well. So instead, they've just chucked the problem at us, and because we know how to do research stuff, they trust us to come up with a bunch of ideas and then write the brief for them.
Brilliant.
Cool.
Does anybody have any final questions? We're nearing the end. Or comments about what you've heard? Anybody there? Okay, so I think we will draw it to a close. Alex, obviously you're an ICG member, so feel free, if you are an ICG member here, if you want to ask any further questions, Alex is on our directory, and Dan and Victoria can be found through LinkedIn, and I hope we can carry on that conversation after today. But I will be circulating the recording as well, and perhaps that will stimulate further thought. So Thank you so much to all three of you for coming along today and giving us your thoughts, and we hope to see everybody soon.
Cheers.
Thank you.
And if we run clinics for people who are having problems, like 45-minute sessions where we talk about a challenge that people might be facing, just holler at Alex if you want to have a chat sometime. And if you want to know about content marketing, holler at Victoria.
Brilliant. Will do. Thank you.
Cool.
Thank
Cheers.
you. Thanks a lot. Have a good evening,
Thanks very
everyone.
much.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye.